Well, on Tuesdays, we talk about here on Day of the Week, should you read the book first or just jump right on in with the movies? Hi, I'm Jordan Anderson, your host from last time, and this is my audio wizard. Say hi, Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach
Shut
Dodson.
up, Zach. So, if you've listened before, you know that this show will cover a broad range of topics. Fortunately, today's episode is a little more upbeat than our last one. Well, the members of our little book club here today are, on my left, Soleil Geniac. Also on my left, Gabriel Walker. Across
Shouldn't you
from me,
let them
Eva
say
Baker. Right next to me is Soleil Geniac.
Hi.
That's Gabe Walker, also on my left.
What's up, what's up?
Across from me is Eva Baker.
Howdy.
And across from me also is the Zach Dotson.
Yo. I'm actually talking this time.
So I'll stop boring you with my intro, and we'll get the party started. So our topic today is book-to-movie adaptations and why they usually suck.
It depends on the...
I wouldn't necessarily
Okay.
say they
Depends.
suck.
Definitely
I know,
depends.
but you
You can't-
gotta,
you can't-
gotta have a fight me statement.
All right.
Okay.
I
it doesn't
think
matter if you read the book or the movie first.
Also, a
Fight
good
me.
example, Lord of the Rings. That
It's
was a very long book with unnecessary descriptions. The movie was much better, in my opinion.
I think you've angered them.
Soleil, I'm on your
Is
side.
that a
No.
You're on my side?
I'm on your
No.
side, and I don't agree with
That's
that.
no.
I agree with that. I
You
read
miss
it.
so
What?
much out of in a movie. You miss so much in a movie
You
that
miss
is in a book.
unnecessary description.
I don't know anything about Lord of the
It doesn't.
Rings.
Just any book. Like
I mean, it does matter. Like every book to movie is different. You know, it really depends on which one we're talking about, whether the movie or the book is better.
I'd say Lord of the Rings is like one of the best examples because it really kept the spirit of the novel in the movie. It really transferred that well. And J.R.R. Tolkien is one of he's one of the best writers I've ever read. And I loved his books. And the movie did the book justice. It did cut out some detail, but I wouldn't say that they're unnecessary detail. They do cut out some characters that I really liked, and they did cut out some things that were like kind of important to the story that were just kind of condensed and shortened. Like, I don't know, there are a lot of questions that I had whenever I watched the Lord of the Rings movies, and then I read the book, and it's like they get a lot of those answered.
Well, I also think like the movie acts more like a good trailer for the book, in a sense that like when you watch the movie, you can get really into it and then want to read the book. Like the movie just reaches a wider audience.
Or is it just kind of ruining it because now you've just spoiled the whole book? Like, you know everything
They
about how...
they did a study on that. They spoiled the book with certain people, and then they let people figure out the ending. They found that reading the book while you had the spoilers was more fun to read because you could figure out like how it ends and what leads up to the ending.
Yeah, but the problem is the thing with a lot of books, especially like mysteries or just books where you're wondering like, why is this is happening, who's doing this, et cetera, et cetera. The entire premise of the book is so you can try and figure it out for yourself as you go along.
Okay, yeah.
A big part of the enjoyment of books, though, isn't necessarily the spoilers from it. It's why those things happen. It's what leads up to it.
Yeah, like the audience is actually stupid. That's how movies and books are set up, is so like the audience can figure it out, but the ending is already set up for you to figure it out. So, yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna get to the end either way.
But not everybody likes stuff to be spoiled for them. Like, whenever I read a book, I like to try to figure it out. Like, if like...
And then when you do figure it out, it's like, whoa, hey, I figured it out, rad.
But like, if I already have, like, if I'm reading a murder mystery and I already know who murdered the person at the end, it's like, oh, well, it's not really any fun because I wanted to play the game. I wanted to play along with the characters to figure out what they know. And it's like, along with the characters, you know what they know. And
See, my
that's just part
thing-
of
you still go through that in the movie.
My thing is when I'm reading a book or watching a movie is that a lot of the times while I'm in the process of reading or watching, I like to turn my brain off, kind of just enjoy it for what it is. I'm not thinking about, who's doing this or what's their motivation. I just like to read it for the enjoyment. And I find it a lot more difficult to do that when I already know what's going to happen.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I do agree. Like, I know that there's like a difference between like watching the movie and reading the book, because in reading the book you're using like your own imagination and your own interpretation.
Not only that, but you get a lot more out of the book, because movies, like you said, they pander to a much broader audience, but at the same time, to do that, they have to condense it. Because, for instance, with It by Stephen King, the book, which I am currently reading and I'm almost done with,
It's fantastic.
it is amazing. 1,153 pages of story, really small print, and if you have the time, I would highly recommend reading it. But then going off of the original movie, quote unquote, which was a mini series.
It didn't even do the book justice.
It really didn't, because
Yeah.
the mini series had 2 parts. Each part was about 2.5, 3
Yeah.
hours long. Even that didn't really get everything in the book.
Was everything
Yeah.
in the book necessary?
Yes.
Did it have to be there?
See,
Yes, it was fantastic. I've read the book. It was hands down one of my favorite books I've ever read in my life.
It is very
was
much worth the read.
fantastic.
See, the
Stephen
thing...
King has a way of writing, and I respect him as a writer because he's one of the best that I've read. But he has a way of writing to where there are certain points in the book that are boring and seem slow, and to people who don't read a lot, you're just like, oh, well, this isn't even necessary. It's not necessary information for you to know. But then you learn later that whole time he was rambling about the
He's
whole
setting
time he
something
was
else
rambling
up,
about
yeah.
something, he's setting up background for that character, why that character reacts the way he does to certain situations.
Because one of the things in the book, and this is, I guess, kind of spoiler, not really, but
Yeah,
kind
there are
of.
probably going to be spoilers in
Yeah,
this podcast,
so just
by the way.
FYI, yeah. But
Spoiler
in
Yeah,
in
get
the
ready.
book, it takes on many shapes, not just the clown. Because in the original miniseries, it was only just a clown. The newer one, the newer movie does a little bit better at this, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, because the whole point of it is that it shapeshifts to mimic whatever this kid's biggest fear is. And in the original miniseries, like he said, it didn't do that. It was just a clown the whole time. In the newer in the newer movie, it did portray that, but in a lot of different ways. The movie was nothing how the book actually was. There were a lot of major characters, major plots, major plots taken out of the movie, which I thought a lot of those things were very necessary to make the story as good as it was.
Well, yeah. I mean, a movie's only like a personal interpretation, like from the director's perspective. I
Now-
don't think it's
Yeah, that's
better.
Now,
to
I
that's
watch-
will
really how
admit-
you should see movies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's the director's version of the book, not
Yeah,
the
yeah,
book.
obviously.
Like, if you
I
don't
mean,
like it,
it's
make
like-
your own goddamn movie.
It's like the Marvel movies, they're going with somewhat of the story of the comics, just in their own way. But
Yeah, and every adaptation's like that.
every adaptation, yeah, I will agree with that. But I feel like there are certain things
That you shouldn't take out.
Exactly. Because I know in the miniseries they didn't even touch upon this, and in the movie, I know in this one they didn't. They
The
might.
turtle.
Well, the turtle, but
Wait, for what movie?
It.
for it. But there are 2 things that were very major plot points in the book of it that were not touched upon in the original miniseries and were not touched upon in the first part of the new It movies. And that was the turtle, the great cosmic being that basically gave birth to the universe, as well as Pennywise, but also the true reason why the losers came back in the first place. Because in the movies and in the miniseries, they kind of just portray it as, oh, they're coming back because they need to defeat this great evil.
But it was much more than just they felt like they needed to. It was kind of written, I feel like Stephen King portrayed it as written in like their destiny that they had to come back.
Not only that, too, but I mean, in the book, it says that it was pregnant. It was a female, and it was pregnant, and it was going to give birth.
And they didn't
Which is why they had to come back,
expand on
because
that.
they knew if they didn't, it
But
would
then
be a
again,
lot
the second
worse.
movie hasn't come out yet.
True,
So-
and they could touch upon it. They
Which
really could.
I hope they do, because if they don't, then that's a big major thing. And they also didn't touch upon a lot of the things that the kids did, because there were a lot of experiences that the kids had that were completely changed that I felt when I was reading the book were terrifying. And I thought that would have been very good.
That's another thing you have to take into consideration with book to movie adaptations, because Stephen King, a lot of his books are, very bloody, very gory, very violent, and then you try and put that to screen. Now, the It movie was a little bit closer to it, just because it had an R rating, so it had a little bit more freedom to do what it wanted to do.
But
and
it
stick to
couldn't
the
go.
book. But
It couldn't go as far as the book.
exactly. The mini series though was not capable of doing that, because
No.
you
it
have
was
to
on.
remember
It was on basic cable, wasn't
exactly. It was on
Yeah.
like ABC, I think, or something like that. And
Yeah.
They
it was
also-
broadcast to the public, so
yeah.
they had to tone everything way down, so you don't get that feeling.
Yeah.
you know.
I also know that I don't like that in the movie, Bev and Bill, they end up kind of having a little relationship at the end of the movie. But in the book, that wasn't until later in the series. That wasn't until when they were adults that they even started thinking of it like that. I know Bill in the book had a crush on Bev, but Bev never saw him that way. And at the
No,
end,
no,
I
no,
felt
Why
like...
is that
was-
a negative change?
It was the other way around. Remember? Bill didn't.
Oh, yeah, it was the other way around.
Yeah,
but,
Bill didn't have romantic feelings for Bev, or at least it wasn't really touched
But
upon.
that's
Bev
part
did.
of the plot. That's how it built up the plot onto when they were adults. Because when they were adults, that feeling that Bev had as a kid, it's why she got into a terrible relationship like she did later on in her life, and it's why she made the choices that she's made throughout her adult life in the book. And having that feeling for Bill and having that known could change a lot of things that happen. And having Bill and Bev kiss at the end means that Bill knows about her feelings now. And now it's something that they could do something about. And it's not, and that changes, that seems like one little thing like that can change a whole plot. Because you can't just write that out. Oh, well, they kissed, so what happened? Oh, they just fell apart. But it wasn't, I don't think it was implied that would happen in the
that's
movie.
my main problem when it comes to book to movie adaptations. Is I understand that they have to cut certain things to make time, budget, not that too, but there are certain aspects that you just should not cut out of a book, especially key elements like the turtle, the relationship of the characters, the birth of it, why they come
again,
back.
definitely-
like you may have thought like that was important, but again, the director probably thought, hey, if this is going to reach a wide variety of people, then we're gonna have to cut some things that aren't really necessary.
But I definitely think you shouldn't add. You can
Yeah.
cut, but you shouldn't add unnecessary.
Yeah.
like you have to take some liberties in order to make a good film.
Yeah,
I feel
but
like that's where the argument comes in of a movie adaptation of a book. Should it really be the director's interpretation, or should it be as true to the book as possible?
It should absolutely be the director's interpretation.
should it
I
be-
disagree.
That's what
I
it
think
is.
it should be as
See,
true to the book
that's-
because I'm
that's-
going to the movie
Well,
for
exactly.
the book.
The author is supposed to
that-
give rights.
But not only
away
that, not only
for the
that
director
too,
to
but
direct.
going off of what Eva said, is you also have to understand when they make a movie, they aren't just pandering to the readers of the book.
they're pandering to
There are-
everybody else.
Exactly. There are people, they're pandering to the people that saw the trailer, that haven't read the books, that may not even have ever heard of the books, that are like, that looks really good. I think I'm going to go see it.
But also, just to not piss everybody off, you shouldn't add super dramatic changes. Like, I can understand they changed a lot of the scene. They changed a lot of the where a lot of fights happened. They changed a lot of the scene in It. I was fine with that because that's whatever. It just makes it more interesting. Because just filming a whole thing in a sewer tunnel isn't that interesting. So filming it in other places is a lot cooler, but
More visually appealing.
it's more visually appealing. But so I'm pretty sure people who've read books and watch the movies can agree to that. That's fine. It's whatever. But like when you add unnecessary stuff that totally throw the whole book off, when you have a sequel on the way that can resolve a lot of these problems. If you're not going to make a sequel, then fine. Maybe you can resolve those problems there. And the people that read the book will always know that the book was better. But if you have a sequel coming on along the way, I think you should stick more towards the book in a series because it's a longer time to resolve the problems, how it was actually written and how it's supposed to play out.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that I understand that they have to change things in the movie to get a wider audience, but at the same time, I feel like certain movies just deserve like a part 2 or just a longer movie in general, like Ready Player One, for example. That book had so much in it and so much was cut out that why didn't they make a part 2?
And a lot of it was changed, like how they found the key in the book. Did anybody else read the book? Ready Player One?
I've read parts of it.
Okay,
No,
well,
I
I
did
couldn't
get my
stand it.
dad's perspective on what he thought book versus movie. And I think like his whole situation was like, yeah, there are some parts missing, there are some parts cut, and there could have been more elaboration here and there. But in the grand scheme of things, as long as it gets like the end story and like reason it's out there to begin with down.
But
True.
with Ready Player One, they literally cut out like half of the book, because in the book, along with finding the 3 keys, they also had to find the 3 gates to go with the keys, and that
And-
was half the battle. They cut out that entire half of the
Exactly.
battle.
And I remember I got my mom's opinion on it too, because my mom and I read it, and she watched the movie on the plane, and she called me right after she got off. She's like, "This movie was terrible. It was terrible." And like I talked about it with her the other day, and she's like, I don't like it because the first key that they find is which starts the whole competition. It was simple. The main character, Wade, was a simple kid. He didn't have any money. He was poor. He had no money, and he couldn't leave his planet because he had no money. He stayed. The only planet that he could go on was Ludus, which was the planet that his school was on. That was a big part of his character development, was his background. And they completely cut that out, and they had him be kind of like this badass race driver dude. And he found the key by going backwards in the car. That's so dumb, because like he found the key on his planet of his school, and that set up the whole purpose of this dude Anorak. That set up his whole character. James Halliday, that set up his whole character, and how it set up the story that James Halliday wanted the key to be found by somebody who was poor. Somebody who was poor and didn't know the evils of the world yet, like the true evil and corporate corruption. And he didn't. That's why he put it on such an easy, poor place. That's why he didn't put it in a stupid racetrack. Like, there are reasons why the author writes it, and I think to get the true story, you should stick to that.
All right. I can agree to that, but if the moral was still found at the end,
I mean,
It still keeps the same general
it keeps
story.
the general story. I do think it is wrong to completely change it. I think that's a little like you could have followed the script.
Well, I mean, then you have, the situations where I can't remember what the movie was exactly. I want to say it was Running Man, but I could be completely wrong on that. But it was a book-to-movie adaptation, and the movie was basically so far from the book that the only thing they kept was the title. And
World War Z.
But the author of the book actually sued them for
Really?
for just taking the name and creating their own story completely.
Did they
And
get the rights for it?
I don't remember honestly, but I think the author actually won the lawsuit.
Really? Okay.
But
Well, I
yeah,
mean, I
If the
hope so.
studio has the rights,
But
they can
yeah,
kind
if
of do
they
whatever they
bought
want
the
with
rights,
but that's the
it's
thing. They
their
bought
problem
they
for
bro-
selling
they
it to
bought the
begin with.
rights to the book, to the story. But they basically just took the title of the book and put it on a different movie.
So like, you know how Simpsons does those like complete knockoffs? Is that what they did? And then the author sued them for it because that's still
it. I think he means
completely
it's a
legal,
completely.
right?
I think no, that's a parody. I think they mean like
parody.
a completely separate story. Had nothing to do with. I think that's what. You're
Yeah,
saying. I don't know.
exactly.
Like they took the
Like,
title,
They just took the title to get the recognition of the people who read the books
Like,
like, oh, I
basically,
recognize
yeah.
that, and then
Yeah,
they come to the
exactly.
to watch
Like
this
putting the
completely
title.
unrelated
like,
thing.
Okay, I can.
Forrest
That's
Gump on
messed
Die
up.
Hard. I know, but like it's like putting the title Forrest Gump on Die Hard. You know, it's like Forrest Gump, but it's the movie Die
Speaking
Hard.
of
you know,
Forrest
it's just-
Gump, I didn't know this originally, but apparently Forrest Gump is a book as well.
I know. I read
Yes.
that about that. I read about that today.
And
And the
the
author,
author
hated it.
hated
He
it.
wrote a sequel, and like one of the very first chapters, he wrote, "They should don't ever let anybody make a movie about your life."
Yeah.
That was like that's
Wow.
pure salt right there.
But then you have movies that were not all that bad, but the authors still didn't like it because they felt something was off. Like for
Like
instance,
The Shining.
Exactly, The Shining. That's actually where I was going because
Yeah.
The Shining was such a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, The Shining is
But-
amazing.
But King did not like it because he felt that Kubrick didn't capture the evil essence of the hotel itself. Because if you watch the movie, you feel like, Jack just goes insane.
That's-
But
yeah.
that wasn't the case. The case was
It was the
The
hotel.
hotel caused him.
And it wasn't made
You-
sure.
In the movie, you
Exactly.
can definitely tell there's something wrong with the hotel. It's not
But it's-
in their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also at the same time, it wasn't so, to where.
Clear.
Yeah, it wasn't clear enough to where people who had never read the book got that. Because
I've never read The Shining, and I got that completely.
I have to agree. I love
like
the
The
movie The
Shining.
Shining.
Oh, The
I thought it
Shining.
was
Yeah, The Sh-
fantastic.
Scared the crap out
the
of me.
movie
Here's Johnny.
Stephen King remade the movie.
He did
Yeah.
as like a
In
mini
his-
series.
Mini-
It's as a mini as I don't know what it was with
he
Stephen
really?
King.
It was-
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Stephen King
I didn't
wrote it.
like
I
it.
think he
it was
directed it.
very. It was
Whoa.
extremely
was-
true to the book. It was
and it
exactly
sucked.
word for word, and
And
it
it
did
sucked?
suck.
It
I watched
sucked.
it.
What are you
suck.
saying? A
Dang.
miniseries?
It was a miniseries,
Okay.
kind of like it. It was true to the book, word for word.
Did
and
he
it
work
sucked.
alongside a director? Because that could have probably made a difference. in how
I
it
don't
came
know.
out.
I don't know
remember.
what. I don't.
I looked
know.
into
if
that
he-
too. I don't
If
remember.
he
But
has no
it was-
experience directing and he just directs his own movies,
He's
then
directed a
he's-
few other movies.
Has he really?
Stephen King. Yeah, I don't remember what they're called. They're not. None of his most
Are they
popular movies
good?
are directed by him. No,
It was
none
a
of them
lot.
I
are
wouldn't
good.
imagine.
He's
Then,
done a
then he
bunch,
should have
though.
worked with like a more successful director.
Well,
just
he
so
thought
that
he was doing that
doesn't-
with Stanley Kubrick, but then he hated The Shining.
One book by Stephen
Guess
King
this
that
was
I thought
better.
the movie was perfect, and the book Misery. I don't know if
Oh
you
my
ever
God,
read that,
yes.
Gabe.
I haven't read
That
or
was
seen it yet.
perfect. I read the book and I watched the movie. That's an example. I watched the movie when I was a little kid, and I read the book, and then I watched the movie again. It was perfect. It was great. I have that's one example of a Stephen King. I don't know. Do you know who directed Misery?
I don't. But The Shining is what I was talking about earlier about how movies shouldn't be the book; they should be the director's version of the book. Because Kubrick
Yeah.
changed a lot from it, and
See, that's-
the movie
he-
Shining was really his own vision
Yeah,
of it.
that's the thing. I feel
It's-
like with that, it's either a hit or a miss. It's either
well,
the-
again, it depends on the director.
Exactly. The movie is either really good or really bad. There
Yeah, it
really
depends.
is no in between.
Yeah. Yeah, it really depends on the director. Like Jaws is another example of that. Have you ever read the book Jaws? It's not good. Yeah,
Even read it.
I have read it. I actually read it, yes, because I really like the movie. It's not good. All the most exciting parts were way lamer.
Yeah.
Like the way the shark dies is that it just gets stabbed and it just sinks.
I mean, that's what they
Instead of
did.
exploding, which is awesome.
Well, that's what they did in the I think the second Jaws, the movie.
Second Jaws. The shark was electrocuted.
Oh yeah. Was it the third one? I know
The
one of
third
them.
one. I
know
think the
one of
third
them
one
rammed it
they
with the
blew
boat.
up the third one. I've seen all the Jaws
There
movies.
was
Well,
one.
I know, me too.
I know
They're
for a
great.
fact.
The
there
fourth
was-
one they stabbed it with
That's
a
it
boat.
then,
yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I meant like he's the ship sinking. Chief Brody's just like stabbing it with the pole,
lame.
and then eventually the shark just starts sinking it. He's like, "Oh, it's dead now."
Well,
Wow, I did it.
So-
I'd be
die.
ashamed
There
if they
are
had
certain
more
points where
babies.
it's if the director knows that the book is incredibly lame, sure. But my question is, do the directors read the books?
Oh yeah.
They have to.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
good.
Of course they do.
I didn't know they did or
Honestly,
not.
sometimes you
Because
can't tell.
Sometimes you
If you
can't tell
don't,
exactly.
sometimes you
That's
cannot
what
tell.
I'm so
I'm
worried.
pretty
So-
sure I've heard of a famous movie where the director didn't read the book. I don't know what it was, but I know that happened.
Another book, Simon.
Love
Yeah.
Simon.
Oh yeah,
You
the
could go.
movie.
I have a I have problems with that movie. But most of my problems with that movie are really nitpicky, like the fact that he didn't wear glasses. Because it's like, I mean, I don't understand how. I mean, in the book, his character wore glasses, but in the movie, he did not. And I don't understand why he
But
didn't
why does
in the
that
movie.
matter?
Like, I know, so that's why I said they're nitpicky. But one thing that really bothers me that I don't think is nitpicking is the character Leah, who is one of his best friends in the book. One of the defining parts of her personality is how she's overweight, and that affects her a lot. But in the movie, her actor is very, pretty and skinny, and that goes completely against her as a character, especially in the sequel, which doesn't have a movie yet. I don't know if they're gonna do a movie for the sequel, but the sequel is the sequel is all about Leah, and that brings even more of her being overweight into the plot line. So how are they going to do that if they already have an actress who is the opposite of how she's supposed to be?
And they also had Leah in love with Simon instead of Abby.
Oh,
Yeah, because Leah, the whole book, was in love with Abby, but in the movie, they're just like, oh, I'm in love
Wait,
with
not
you,
in
Simon.
The first book.
Yeah.
In the first book, I don't remember
Or
her really.
she didn't like Simon. That's my point. She didn't like Simon.
Yeah.
And in the movie, she's like, "Oh, Simon, it's you. I like you." And I'm like, "Shut up. No, you don't."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like that's a big problem when it comes to movies, especially book to movies, is when they get the wrong actors. Like, I don't think it happens too often, but this with Leah is a really big thing, considering her weight is such a big part of her character in the books, and they just forgot that in the
You
movies.
saw the movie Everything. How did it
Yes.
compare?
Everything. I feel like that was pretty good to the book. I can't really find anything to complain about with
Because
that
I never saw the
one.
movie. I just wanted to see. It.
Okay.
I mean, as far as casting goes, I know like a lot of directors will cast more popular actors. I haven't seen Love, Simon. I was thinking of a different movie.
They base it on what actors can put butts in seats.
Yeah.
is
Which one's
very
gonna
true.
attract the
As
more
far as
audience?
I
therefore
know,
you need
Leah's
something
act-
I mean, the
appealing.
thing with
Wasn't that
with
popular
getting
or anything.
actors to play certain characters, I feel it could either not matter or matter entirely, because I mean, like for example, with Marvel, in the original comics, Nick Fury was a white guy in an eye patch, and in the movies, it's Samuel L. Jackson with an eye patch.
Once you go black, you never go back.
Exactly.
Now he's like
But-
a legend.
I mean, I would not have anybody else play Nick Fury personally,
Yeah.
just because he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
So that was a director's
although
choice
his
that
race
made it
isn't a
better.
part of the character, so you
Yeah,
can change
exactly.
that.
Yeah, that is true.
Wait,
Him
when
being
race-
overweight that's
Yeah, when race or looks or anything like that isn't really part of the character, it really doesn't matter. But if that's a
I know
very
you also have to take into consideration like in modern time like politics. Had they changed Nick Fury from black to white, there'd be an outrage.
oh yeah, there would be a complete outrage. If
So
that
I know a lot of characters are purposely being changed from white to black in order to get more like recognition for
which
being diverse.
sometimes it doesn't matter, and most of the times I really don't care about that.
So
yeah,
yeah,
most of
like,
the times it
most of
doesn't
the time
matter.
it doesn't matter.
Other times, you kind of have to have it as, that character. Because for example, with Iron Fist in the Netflix original series, Iron Fist in the comics was a rich white boy. In this show, he was a rich white,
Yeah,
a
that's
rich white
exactly
guy.
what it was.
And there was an actor who was of some Asian descent. I'm not entirely sure, but he was a better casting choice in terms of actual skill and physique and martial arts. But the only problem is you kind of can't do that with Iron Fist just because that's part of his character.
Exactly.
He was a rich white kid who crash landed
Trained.
into the Himalayas and was
Yeah.
trained by monks, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why can't he be a rich Chinese kid? That
There's
their,
more
their-
rich
their family
Chinese.
has an office in New York.
Oh my god, that's just not how it be. Zach.
Why not? Why can't it be that way?
I mean, I guess like casting wise and like looks wise, it doesn't really matter too much unless it's a big aspect of the story.
What about gender? Like, what if the character is a girl and then changed to a guy?
I think that does matter.
Because
I think it's the same, although
it
the
does
gender of
matter
the
a
character
lot.
does tend to
Because-
matter more than their race.
Especially if they have like a love
more often.
interest.
back
or
to
they're-
like back to Ready Player One, the character H was portrayed as a white dude, and it turned out that H, when he found her, was this overweight black chick.
Well,
And they changed it in the movie to this really buff black dude.
what?
No.
I don't
I
think
thought-
they did that.
wait,
No,
movie?
it was
This looks like a girl.
it was a girl.
Ew.
Yeah.
I saw the movie. I just remember.
Yeah. The only thing
Oh
they
my god. Oh no, it's the character. No, the girl. You're right.
Yeah.
It's the girl. It's the character. Sorry, it's the character that's a dude. But,
But I mean,
that's
that
not
was
how
the
it be.
same in the book. Like, they didn't change anything with H in the movie. Besides, they didn't mention that she's gay in the movie. But I don't think that's
That
a big
doesn't
deal
matter.
at all.
But
so.
like, I forgot. It's her character that was supposed to be white, but they changed to this big black dude, which was wrong.
Oh, okay. So they changed the race of her.
They changed the
dude.
race. Yeah,
Whatever
and
it's
the
called,
buff
Avatar.
level.
I mean, again, they
Buff
changed.
level.
I mean, she was.
10.
It was supposed to be buff. I just don't remember
Well,
the race.
Remember, like, he was just this normal white dude who just chilled. And, you know, that's, like, the big surprise because, like, her whole background was like, oh, yeah, my mom was, like, trying to protect me as a kid. That's why she put me on here as a... I know. That's why she put me on here as a white dude.
A book-to-movie adaptation that I personally thought was pretty damn good, at least when, you know, it first came out, was the first Hunger Games movie.
Mm-hmm.
The
I
the
agree.
first Hunger Games and the first Hunger Games movie, book and movie.
I don't think the Hunger Games works as a movie.
What do you mean?
I don't even
What?
think like the book. I don't know. Most of the book was supposed to be in her head, and
Wow.
the thing it would have been fine if the director made the movie and like he restructured it so
Like,
you
well,
can watch it
the
outside of
majority-
her perspective.
the
but
majority of her
they
internal-
try that with like I don't know the news guys saying like trying to say out loud what she's thinking. It's like an audience. Do you know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah,
what
the
was his
Capitol
name?
people.
Not
Stanley
Senna, it was,
Tucci,
like,
that guy.
that guy, blue
Yeah.
hair
Oh
boy.
crap!
Yeah.
What was his name?
Stanley Tucci.
Wait, was it Stanley Tucci?
That was the actor. I
That's
don't
the
know his
actor.
name.
No, but anyways, I mean, for the most part, that movie stayed pretty true to the book, except for like
Yeah, plot-wise.
a few little nitpicky things. you
Yeah, I agree.
know? Like in the movie.
Weren't the Tracker Jacks supposed to be a lot bigger?
Oh yeah, the tracker.
Does
well,
that matter though?
That was
How
that
big
was
they
Yeah,
are?
that doesn't matter.
That's not even-
They get the
Doesn't
same
matter.
effect.
That was one of those things that didn't even stay in my mind, honestly. But I know one of the things that was, you know, not that big but still kind of big was the way she got the Mockingjay pin.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they changed that in the movie.
Because in the book,
And-
she got
yeah.
it from her
She got it from
friend
a-
who was the daughter of the mayor of District 12, right? And that was a little bit more, you know,
It just gave more background.
it gave
I
more
guess.
meaning behind it because
Yeah.
she was basically her only friend, you know,
Yeah,
and
in
even
the movies, you just like
Yeah, in the-
someone's like, hey, good luck, here you go.
yeah, in the movie, she
Take it.
found it in like one of the
In the marketplace.
in
I
the
think,
marketplace,
right?
and she found it. She's like, "Oh, what's this?" She's like, "Oh, it's a Mockingjay pin. You can have it."
Yeah.
Another thing, and this is kind of the thing that bugged me the most, just because I felt it wasn't as hard hitting. In the movie and in the book, you know, towards the end of the actual Hunger Games, they're attacked by, you know, the pack of dogs. You know, the mutant dogs or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
There was a name for him. I can't remember.
I don't
But
either.
in the book, though, it was stated that the mutant dogs were actually the past tributes that had already fallen in the
Yeah.
game. You know.
What? I don't remember that at
Yeah,
all.
remember because
Yeah.
they had the collars with their district number on it, and they had their
They had the
eyes.
eyes.
I remember
yeah.
when it
Because-
first came out. Like that was the first complaint.
Yeah, because when
Oh my gosh.
when one of the dogs like face down with Katniss, she recognized that that it had Ruth's eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and it had her district number on the collar. You know,
I feel like that could have been represented in
that
individual.
should have been that. Honestly,
That
in
could
my
have been
opinion, that
really well
should
done.
have been in the movie because they
Yeah,
already
that
had the
would have made a
dogs.
difference.
They already had the dogs in the movie. You know, it's not like they completely cut out the dogs. I don't think it would have been a lot more to put a collar and one of the dogs have special eyes that
Like
were
maybe
like
she
Ruth's.
takes
Yeah.
a moment and then
And just like,
like,
looks at him and
watches-
just like Ruth, you know, or something
Yeah.
like that. You know, it wouldn't have been that hard to put that in. And
No.
it would have been that. It would have added
again,
like
that's
maybe a few
director's
seconds
interpretation.
extra of
Like if
runtime.
I was the director, maybe I definitely would have put that in. But
But that does add a lot more. Like gives you another example of how ruthless and merciless the capital is. So that really is an important detail.
Yeah.
And showing just how messed up they are.
Ruthless.
Get out.
But besides the first movie, do you have any complaints about the other ones? Because I don't remember that much.
Honestly, book-wise, I remember hardly anything from Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I do know that I found them both, both of the movies, or all three, I should say, very entertaining. I really did like it. I actually, going back to the books, I know a lot of people didn't like Mockingjay all too much, but
Yeah.
I honestly really liked Mockingjay.
Who here has read Mockingjay? Because
I've read Mockingjay.
I've read
I
all
have
three.
read
what
all
did
of
you
them.
think of the 2 parts of Mockingjay in the movie versus the book?
Honestly, I don't remember much
should
of
have been one
either
movie.
media.
Same.
I remember like
I feel
But like,
I
what
feel
happened
like
to the more
Mockingjay-
detail? Come on.
I feel like Mockingjay was one
Yeah,
of
but
those
it's-
books that really didn't need a second part. Because the only reason Hollywood was doing 2 parts was because they did it with Harry Potter.
And that made a
for
lot
the
of
Deathly
money.
Hallows. Exactly.
Definitely
That
made a lot of
that
money.
made a
And
shit
that,
ton of money.
Well, I
Yeah,
felt
but
like that
there-
was such a big book that it needed.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
much.
with
That
But
was-
for
Deathly
but for
Hallows,
movies,
yeah.
there's a difference between like adding more, like 2 parts add more detail, and just killing the pacing of it.
You have to
'Cause
remember,
there
this
was a
is-
lot of details in it, but there were details that didn't matter, and they just slowed everything down.
You have to
Harry
remember, this
Potter?
is Hollywood.
Oh, I'm talking
this
about
is Hollywood
Mockingjay.
Okay,
we're
okay.
talking about
Well,
here.
had it
They
gone
will
any
beat a dead
quicker, do you
horse.
think you would have enjoyed it as?
If it was one movie, yes, it would have been far more
So
entertaining.
you thought it was a lot. It was too slow.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
I mean,
so an example of too much detail in movies versus books.
Is that the same for Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows?
I haven't seen either of them since they came out,
I
so
feel like
I don't
that
quite
one
remember.
was like those are thick books.
Those are pretty thick boys, but like,
Yeah.
I mean,
What about Twilight? Has anyone seen those?
I've seen the movies, but I've never read the books.
I've never done either, and I'm keeping it that way.
I've
So-
only seen the
Amen.
first one.
I don't know. I've heard from what my mother tells me. I've heard that they're pretty good adaptations. That's what she said. She's like they were pretty solid.
From
don't
what
know
I
much
heard,
about 'em, but-
actually, the books weren't all too horribly bad.
You're talking about Twilight, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
From what I heard, like I said, I've never read or seen any of the movies or books, but I've heard that the movies were kind of crap too.
Yeah, the first one wasn't good.
The
I
first,
mean-
okay, my dad actually saw the first one. I think it was like, it might have been a date with my mom or something. I can't remember, but he said the first one wasn't too bad, but after that he was just like, no.
Yeah, I can agree. The first one, because
Did you see the first one?
wait, the first one.
I'm talking about Twilight still.
Yeah, I've watched all of them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Did
Why didn't you
Sorry.
raise your
Yeah.
hand when I said that? What?
Because I never read the books.
Oh,
But I've watched all the movies, and I thought the first one was pretty solid.
what do you think about the last book being split into 2 movies? How do you think that turned out? Just completely from just an
I
outsider's perspective, not knowing the books.
Kind of liked it. I didn't think it was too. It was a little tiny bit slow, but not unbearable. Like Mockingjay.
I don't know. Mockingjay wasn't unbearable.
It
to
wasn't
me. I thought
unbearable,
it was really
but
nice.
it was. It definitely.
It could have been
it was
condensed.
unnecessary.
It could have been
Yeah.
It
condensed
was definitely
into one.
It was
unnecessary.
starting
But,
to
like,
push it with
still,
me. I was
take
like,
my money.
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm
back
not-
then I was very into the Hunger Games thing, so I was all gung ho for it. But now
I
looking
guess
back,
not.
they could have condensed it into one movie.
They
'Cause
could
I'm not
have,
big
but
on the Hunger
again,
Games.
budget.
But then again, money.
Like,
money,
why do you
money, money,
think
money, money.
movies are made most of the time? Like, it's all just to draw in more income.
That is very true.
Well, that's what
Well, that's-
Hollywood
When you
does.
look
They
at
beat
it-
the dead horse until they can't get anything else
When
out
you
of
look
it.
at it
Well,
from
that's
the
mostly big
director's
budget
point of
movies.
view, all of this stuff, yeah, I get why they do it. They like money. I mean, I'd like money too if I was a director. I'll do whatever I want to this story to make myself some money. But
Again,
for the rest of us,
it's about respect too, is what we're arguing for.
Yeah, for
I'd say
for
like
those
respect
big budget
to the author,
movies that
respect to the story.
Yeah, for those big budget movies that have like $100 million budgets that they have to be safe bets. Yeah, they do have. There's like a lot of studio interference, and they do make a lot of cuts based on the mass audience. But if you look at a lot of smaller movies that are book adaptations, where the director has a lot more control, those movies tend to be a lot better. They're like The Shining. The Shining, I don't think that had a very large budget. That was just like one location. And you get movies like The Shining, you don't get those kind of things
Yeah,
from
I wonder
$100 million
had The Shining had a
budgets.
bigger budget, would it be better or worse?
I don't think so.
I did
'cause
see an
what else
example
would you
of
add that you'd need $100 million
Yeah,
budget
because you
for.
can make an amazing film with a low budget, and it'd be amazing.
Yeah, but there are tons of movies that are based on books that have low budgets where, because they have low budgets, the studios are going to let them take more risks.
It needs to be
and
a
the director
balance.
has more control over it.
That's another thing too with like small budgeted
Like,
movies, with especially with adaptations, is especially if it's a book that would require a lot of like special effects, like it. Going back to it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the
books
original.
like It's, you can't really.
Exactly. The original, like we said, the original miniseries didn't have a lot of its transformations, but that's understandable because it was kind of obviously a lower budgeted, project, and they just couldn't afford that. They couldn't afford the special effects. They couldn't, afford to put its many transformations. We were lucky to even get, the spider creature that we got at the end. I'm surprised they kept that. That's probably why they didn't do the majority of his transformations, because they needed that part, because that's a very essential part.
They saved all their budget up for that one scene.
And even that was crap, but But I mean, then again, you have movies like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
The book to movie adaptation. That one was really good.
That was
The
really
Silence of the
fantastic.
Lambs movie got an Oscar. Anthony Hopkins and what's her name?
God, I don't remember the
Jude-
girl's
Oh yeah, Jude.
Judy Foster?
There you go. I think that was it. If we're wrong, then we apologize. But they both got awards for their performances. And I believe Silence of the Lambs was the first horror thriller kind of movie, whatever. It
Yeah, it
was the
was.
first of its kind to get an
Best
Oscar.
Picture.
Best Picture, exactly. So,
Yeah, well, I
And-
don't know. The Oscars kind of have their own problems with what movies they honor, so.
yeah,
That's very
no kidding.
true.
But it
That's
still
very
got
true.
the award. But then again, it was pretty damn close to the book.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a few nitpicky things. Like I can't remember exactly what it is, but like that famous line where he's like, I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. In
Yeah.
the books, it was a different kind of wine. Which is nitpicky. They had to
Yeah.
change that so people would know what he's talking about. Because
Yeah.
in the book, it was some wine that I didn't even know. I'm like, what the hell is that? And the only reason I knew was because I had watched the movie before. I'm like, oh, Chianti, that must be a type of wine.
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
Stuff like that, it doesn't matter. No one
Exactly.
cares. They're idiots.
I feel like the majority of the time with adaptations, as long as it stays true to the main plot, people
I wouldn't say the
won't
main
be-
plot. I'd say it's the main idea of it.
That's a little
So you
bit
can
hard.
change parts of the plot and make.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. But overall, as long as you stick to the main story, a little, at least, relatively,
Yeah.
people won't be all too overly, pissy about it, as long as they still like it. Like, a lot of the times, because I'm guilty of this a lot. Like when I go and watch something that's like an adaptation of a book or a TV show or something like that I've really enjoyed, and I watch it and I walk out of the theater, nitpicking it, saying, "Oh, this is wrong, that's
Yeah.
wrong, this shouldn't have been this way." My dad will usually say, it's like, well, if you hadn't had read the book, if you hadn't had seen the original, would you still have liked it? And yeah, the majority of the time I say yeah, because as long as I feel like I've been entertained, like it's stuff that really doesn't matter all too much, I can be happy.
Yeah.
So, moral of the story: book ruins movie.
Is it better to read the book and know that the book is better than the movie, or is it better to just waste yourself, like to rid yourself of the disappointment that you're gonna
sometimes
get?
Ignorance is bliss.
Sometimes ignorance
If you
is
don't-
bliss, but then at the same time,
Sometimes.
exactly, and then other times you're gonna watch it one way or another because you're like,
Like, if it's like a classic movie or like a really famous novel, then maybe it is better if you read the book and get a full grasp on it.
well, I mean, then also the book might also cause you to have
Aneurysms.
no, well, maybe, but it causes you maybe to have misinterpretations of what the movie is going to be like. Because for instance, Shawshank Redemption,
Like overhype you.
more like underhype you for the movie.
Oh.
Because for instance, with Shawshank Redemption, Shawshank was a short story by King. actually. It wasn't even a full-fledged
Oh yeah,
book.
yeah.
But they made it into a movie that was full-length movie and, phenomenally well done. Like,
Oh, okay. So in this case, movies are better than
I
writing.
mean, I personally have not read Shawshank, so I do not know. I plan to read it eventually, but like I said,
Has
it's a
anyone
short
read
story.
anything? Here?
Yes. Thank you very much.
We like to read, Zach.
Like you heathen.
I mean,
Heathen.
I read Jaws.
Heathen. Why would you waste your time with that?
I mean, I'm sure we've all read Outsiders. We were just talking about that.
oh yeah, we all had to in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Best
Yeah.
book ever. I mean,
I wouldn't.
Let's just make this.
Gabe,
Hey,
shut up.
hey.
Okay,
Hey.
no. Don't
Hey.
get me wrong.
Oh,
Don't get me wrong.
God.
Outsiders was a phenomenal book,
Yes.
and
Best
it is
ever,
up there.
though.
It is
Okay,
up there.
Maybe not the best, but damn, that's such a good book.
It was such a good
Yeah.
book.
It was
I
a
will
very
say
good
It was
book.
such a good book.
Everybody can agree. I didn't like the movie. I remember watching it and being very disappointed because a lot
Agree
of
to
really
disagree.
good. Well, there was the movie that we watched in 7th grade, and that was the extended version, which was true to the book. That had I think everything in there.
Honestly,
word
I
for
don't even
word.
remember.
Well,
I don't remember the movie at all
'cause,
either.
yeah, I loved it.
I remember.
But
I remember how one of the characters dies. That's about it.
two of the
Well,
characters
yeah.
die.
Well, yeah.
But the deaths
Three
are the
died.
same, so
yeah, exactly.
whatever.
But my point is the extended
of them
version was
died.
very good, but the original version wasn't that good because the extended version had everything. It had the point like after all these characters died, like they had the point where like they're talking about it, and it was really good character development that pushed the book further. But in The Outsiders, the character died. That was the end of the book. I mean, that was the end of the movie. And like. Or like it had like a few minutes left, but there was nothing.
It was
Kinda
basically.
leave you on a
substantial.
cliffhanger.
Yeah,
kinda left
it was one of the
and it was
characters
sad.
died, and then Pony Boy. That was the
Pony Boy, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I respect that they made two different cuts. One for people who are just going to be like, all right, I want to watch a movie and be sad. Then another one
Don't
for
we
like, I
all?
want to watch the
Yeah.
movie completely because I read the book.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty solid.
So, shall we get off of book to movie
Well,
adaptations,
I
or
want one more thing because Eva had a good point the
You
other
really
day that
won't
like
talk
you
about
have
this,
to
don't
like
you?
remember
I
we were
really
talking
like
about it.
Avatar.
Reading the book is always better. Like we were talking about that, weren't we?
I wouldn't say
No.
it's
No.
always.
It's
better.
not.
I think
was
at
the
the
very
Especially-
Most
least-
of the times, it's better.
At the
The
very
majority of the times, sorry,
Shut up.
sorry.
At the very least, I think that reading the book can just open your mind to the different interpretations and the more detail and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
I mean-
it gives you a different perspective, which, you don't need it, but it can be useful and just
It's just nice to have.
Yeah.
The books also give you a lot more information, a lot more character development, most of the time at least, and all of that.
Yeah, so like reiterating what she just said, I completely agree. I don't think like you shouldn't read the book. I'm not advocating for reading is stupid.
burn all the books.
Burn all the books. No, I'm not. No. I'm just saying like some people just don't have the time or they just don't want to and they want to purely enjoy the movie.
Do you think it relates to talk about Frankenstein? Because I haven't seen the movie, but I mean, we all
like-
know
there's like
we all
14
know like
movies.
the stereotype of Frankenstein, but we also know that the Frankenstein
That's
we
not
know is
right.
not
Exactly.
like the book.
It's
So
not like the book at all.
Do you think that relates to this conversation, or is
Um,
it too?
they definitely horrored it up a little bit more. Not
Well,
horrored.
they sold it as a
Horrored.
horror movie.
I mean,
Well, that's
I-
that goes. Well, that's
Pimping
more
out
of the
Frankenstein's
studio.
monster out on the streets. I'd
I
take him.
Yeah,
but
that's,
like, yeah, they definitely
Like a
did that a
little
little bit
picture.
more just for entertainment purposes. But there have been so many remakes and stuff of Frankenstein's that I don't really think it counts anymore because at least one of them has to be right.
well, you think about the Frankenstein that everybody knows about, and the Frankenstein from the book is like two separate things.
Oh,
Or
Exactly.
Frankenstein's
Yeah.
monsters, I
Yeah,
should say.
that's another thing. People, Frankenstein as the monster, but Frankenstein was a scientist.
Yeah.
Frankenstein's
See,
a
So
monster.
that's
Yeah,
my
exactly.
point.
If
is,
you really
is
read
that
the book, you
bad
know that
the-
Frankenstein is the monster.
Is it bad that
on
the,
the
mass
inside.
public
Yes.
thinks of Frankenstein as the wrong character?
Yeah, and I think that's more just you don't think about it as you grow up. You're just like, oh, it's like
I mean, they didn't advertise for Frankenstein the monster. Like,
Well, the
being
problem
Frankenstein.
is the original movie was titled Frankenstein,
Frankenstein,
and
and then
it
it
was
was
a
about the
monster
monster.
monster movie.
so everybody.
It was
It's Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Jinx.
But it's Frankenstein's monster, but the doctor is Frankenstein. But I think that's just kind of basic knowledge as you grow up. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like learning that Santa Claus
it's a-
isn't real. Sorry, guys. But
Spoiler alert.
spoiler alert.
We have
But
spoiler at
it's
the
kind of like
beginning.
learning.
Yeah.
It's kind of like learning that it's just like, oh my god, it's not actually Frankenstein.
I just thought about how, like, whenever we all first discover that Frankenstein isn't really Frankenstein, I feel like it's one of those things that kids would hold other kids' heads, like, haha,
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
know that Frankenstein's the.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know that
Stupid-
Santa's
yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago now, I guess, our favorite director, M. Night Shyamalan, came out with a live-action interpretation of it. And when I say interpretation, I mean that in the terms very, very loosely. The movie kept a very, very, very basic hold on the plot.
I mean, it did condense like seasons upon seasons worth of episodes.
No, because you have to. He was thinking that it was going to be a hit movie and that he would be able to do the other two movies. Because if you remember, the original series was broken up into 3 main seasons: Water, Earth, and Fire.
And they wanted to do a trilogy of movies, each movie based on
Exactly.
each season.
And the first movie was based off of the Book of Water, which is Aang, the Avatar, learning how to bend water and his journey to do that. I have so many problems with this movie, but for story purposes, it was a very choppy version of the original series.
Yeah.
Because they took out a lot of elements that I feel were very important.
Yeah.
They took out Kyoshi Island and the Kyoshi Warriors, which were both very important to the story, and then they took out the city of Omashu,
Yeah.
which would come back later on in season 2, which I do admit he might have been planning on bringing that up in the second movie, but still. Then you had the horrible acting.
Yeah. You see.
Yeah,
You see with Kyoshi Island and Omashu, they are important to the story, but you can argue if you have to cut something to put it into the time frame of a movie, you should cut
Do you
those.
think if Avatar: The Last Airbender was made into a book at all?
No, it wasn't.
No.
A book or
I don't know why the
written
seasons are
out
called
story?
books, but no,
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah.
So like what you're saying is like the character depth throughout the series and throughout the seasons and episodes, and you're seeing the slow progression of the characters. And the reason you dislike it is because it's so
not
quickly.
necessarily.
No,
Well, not
no,
necess-
no,
That's
that's not
not
what I'm saying.
It's not that the progression is slow. Is that there's a lot more of it because they have more time throughout a
Well,
TV
not only that,
season.
what I mean by the characterization is off is in the the original series, Aang was this very goofy, very aloof, very carefree kind of
yeah.
person
And he kinda
who was running away from his responsibility as the Avatar because he was scared. He didn't want to be the Avatar. In the movie,
You don't get a sense of that.
no,
really at
you don't
all.
get a sense of that at all. He just seems like this.
Again, condensed into.
No, not even that. His character was just completely off. He was just like serious, this kind of never laughs, never smiles, very somber.
Do you think if the series was created into a book, there'd be even more depth behind the characters, more vividly explained, which is why you'd probably enjoy the book more than you would the series, and you'd enjoy the series more than you would the movies.
I don't know.
So, in correlation to all of this, it relates.
Yeah. Moral of the story: the original is most times better,
Yeah,
But not always.
but not always.
And the adaptation can also be great.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Hold on, guys. I think that's a solid ending. So, thank you all for tuning in today to our fabulous show. If you have any suggestions for me for future topics, feel free to email me. And sorry, I lied to you last year. I mean, not last year. Sorry, I lied to you last time. Our email is dayoftheweek24.7@gmail.com. And we're now on Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube.
We have a YouTube? What?
Yeah, we have a YouTube now too. So
What are we putting on
make sure to tune in there too.
What are we putting on our YouTube? I didn't know about this.
We're just putting the show on YouTube.
Oh, just the whole thing.
So we're now on Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube. So make sure to tune in there too.
We're also
Stay
we're
groovy,
also
my
on
friends.
we're also on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh
You
yeah,
forgot
we're
that.
all okay.
What's
hold
our
on.
handle?
Day of the week 24.7. So
No,
stay groovy,
no
my friends.
.7 on Twitter. It's just 24.
Oh, that's why I'm having a hard time logging into Twitter.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't find it.
Well, yeah. So stay groovy, my friends. It's all good. That's the end, Zach.
Okay.
Zach.
Stop it.
What?
Zach,
Stop
stop
the
the